Welcome to the 2025 Q1 first all community call of the year. My name is Carl Moll. I'm the technical project advocate here at FINOS. I hope many of you have seen me before, at least on this call or some of our project calls. Very busy agenda today. Just a reminder, this event and all FINOS events adhere to the FINOS and Linux Foundation's Code of Conduct. We will get started with a kickoff to the new year and upcoming dev events, as well as a recap on some recent dev events with our field CTO, Olivier Poupini. We will then have Griswold give us an update on OSFF 2025 London and calls for papers. And then we will have the project SIGs and community updates on TraderX, FINOS AI, CDM, FTC3, FSI Autism Hackathon, and a new working group from the DevOps Automation SIG. We will then recap with some final announcements and save the dates. And then we'll have a recap of the calls to action and Q&A time permitting. So a note on the calls to action today, we're trying out something a little bit new along with the live stream. On some of the project slides, we have a new feature on calendar.finos.org, which allows you to invite yourself by it brings you to a web page that's unique per event on the calendar. By putting in your email address, it will send an invite to your calendar. On a number of the slides, we have a QR code that brings you to the Invite Me page. It's a new thing that we're trying out because we haven't had a good way to directly get people to invite them to calls. And we're going to try this along with your QR codes. So get your QR code scanner on your browser or your phone ready. We're going to have a lot of good QR codes for people to join today. And with that, I will hand over to Olivier.
Thank you, Carl. And hello, everyone. So 2024 was an exceptional year for FINOS. We reached a significant milestone by welcoming our 100th member. And this achievement underscores really the power of our community. As our members grow, so does our collective strength and ability to drive innovation. The more contributors we have and the more successful we become. Together, we are really shaping the future of financial services through open collaboration and shared expertise. So as we step into 2025, we find ourselves at the dawn of a new era for open source. The acceleration of AI-powered features is transforming both internal and external workflows, data pipelines, DevOps automation, cybersecurity, or in the way we are creating and consuming cloud services, pushing the boundaries of what is possible. This year, we will witness unprecedented advancements as AI integrates more deeply into our projects and solutions. To fuel new contributions and encourage cross-pollination across our existing projects, we have set an ambitious plan focused on developer activities. Expect a vibrant calendar filled with meetups, workshops, masterclasses, and hackathons. These events will serve as catalysts for innovation, providing platforms for our community to learn, collaborate, and create. Speaking of hackathons, we kicked off the year with a tremendously successful event organized by DTCC, with FINOS and Broadreach as partners. We supported team recruitment, project submissions in FINOS Labs, and assembled a distinguished judge panel comprised of board members, technical oversight committee members, and ambassadors. The event saw participation from 250 individuals representing 50 organizations, and an impressive 35 projects were submitted, and 4 of them received grants to continue their efforts and push towards productized open source solutions. So congratulations to CIBC, DTCC, Dutch Bank, and Duke University for their outstanding achievements. And in conclusion, I invite you to stay tuned for upcoming announcements. FINOS will be at API Days New York on May 15th, where we will host a FinTech Open Source Developer Day featuring 12 sessions. Our members are, of course, invited to join for free at this exciting event. So thank you for your continued support and dedication, and let's make 2025 another exceptional year for FINOS. Thank you, and back to you, Carl.
Excellent. Thank you, Olivier. Next up, we have Grizz with some announcements about OSFF London and calls for proposals, sorry.
Same thing. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for joining. Grizz Griswold, Head of Marketing for FINOS, and thanks, Carl. We just wanted to have a couple of quick things about the Open Source and Finance Forum. We have 2 of them this year, if you have not heard. London will be June 24th at the QE2 Center. The schedule is opening up in a couple of weeks, but registration is already open. In New York on 21st and 22nd of October at Convene, which is where we were about 3 years ago on Liberty Street, we will be there, and the CFP is launching pretty soon, or sorry, June. Registration is already open, and so you could register for London here with the QR code at the top. If you're looking to sponsor, you can use the one on the bottom. But the next slide is really important because it's very time sensitive, Carl. Is if you're looking to speak at OSFF in London on June 24th, the call for papers, the call for proposals, the call for speakers closes on Sunday, March 16th. That is this Sunday at, I think, midnight. We are looking for talks on artificial intelligence within open source and within financial services, case studies around open source adoption, the common domain model, FTC3, tools, best practices, talent development, hot topics, OS climate, open source collaboration, community building, open source readiness, and open source security, and more. So if you have an idea for a talk, go ahead and submit it. We get over, let's see, last year we had 125 plus talks for about 30 spots. I think that we have a few more spots this year in London. So bring us your best. That's what we're looking for, because this community is continuing to grow and continuing to bring great things. And so bring your best, because that's what the community is expecting. The last slide. If you are a FINOS member company, please look out for June 10th and October 7th. June 10th is, if you are a FINOS member, you may know that you can attend for free to OSFF. You have to register by June 10th. Otherwise, the price of your ticket goes from free to £450. So please register now. Do not wait until June 10th, because we'd love to see you there. And we have a great time each year. You learn a lot, I hope. And the hallway track is the best track in the world. Thank you.
And we will have reshare the QR codes for CFP and for registration at the end of the call. So if you missed the first QR code, we will follow up shortly on that. Okay, next off, SIG and project and community updates. First off, we're very excited to have Dove Katz from Morgan Stanley giving us the future and state of TraderX.
Thanks so much. So TraderX, for people that are familiar, we have a couple of, I guess the demo slide is available directly from the FINOS, you have the sandboxes, right? But TraderX is a reference application architecture. It's designed to be simple and accessible by the student community, anyone who's really just getting started, as well as anybody who has that familiar financial domain experience. We had a lot of action with TraderX over the last year. People are really picking it up for the things it was exactly intended to be done, meaning hackathons and working through an integration, illustrating your integration in terms of taking a sample project and making that change to and educating your audience based on what that change is. A couple of them are listed below. We have a bitemporal database that was put in there. Azure Radius was helping build multi-container environment and using their approach to doing that. Calm is architecture as code, and you may hear more about that either today or in other sessions. But again, taking a kind of distributed architecture and modeling that out in a emerging language model for articulating your architecture, great. We have other examples in here. Backstage, they're looking at doing something. And I also take it to vendor meetings. Excuse me. Take it to vendor meetings. Vendor wants to show something. They're generating code changes. They're generating unit tests. Great example. Go do it in TraderX. You don't have to go get them on your code. Give them a familiar code base and tell them, come back with changes on that. It's also, many vendors, we can't list them here, but in meetings that we have, it's a great way to engage with people on a familiar code base. What we found is, with all of this that's going on, and it's designed to be very simple, but you can add to it any level of sophistication that you want. what we found is the challenge that we have, that we knew we'd have, is we want this thing to be like a set of chapters in an O'Reilly book, so to speak, right? We want to have, how do you add containerization? How do you add authentication? How do you move to a service mesh architecture? Whatever it is you want to do to it. Now we got this problem where we have this simple code base that needs to coexist in its multiple states. And we need to think about how, and this is the problem I'd love to get help from the community on, how do we present that list of Git hashes of all the different states of this repo to a community to let you know where you'd want to jump in. So if you want to add some sort of sophisticated message bus in, you probably want to start at the version of this thing that's already built into a multi-container, robust ecosystem, rather than start on the version that never had containerization enabled. Whereas if you're trying to do an alternative form of infrastructure as code, you may want to start pre-containerization because you might want to illustrate something differently over there. So we came up with called like 3 swim lanes of things. You could see a bit of a graph on the right. This was in one of our recent meetings where we said, we're going to have some kind of opinionated path of where we want to build on top of from what a multi-container version looks like. But we'll show you the journey of getting from no containers to that multi-container version. Similarly, you want to do something with functionality. We want to add in new features. We want to add in kind of regulation as code into the TraderX. So there's app functionality, and that you could add on to anything, but maybe just start from a mature, build multi-container version. And then there's those infrastructure ones where you're adding something that's a bit meta to the project itself. It likely doesn't change the functional code, but so again, we want to have this place where you can have kind of any of these starting points accessible to you, so that really what you're learning is the transition from some starting point to something you've introduced to the project, without this project becoming this all-consuming kitchen sink that nobody will ever be able to pull down into their environment and run it. We're looking for partners. We're looking for the community. It'd be great to get people involved in that. I encourage you to join the calls. I encourage you to take a look at some of the open issues where we started. This picture on the upper right is from one of those calls, and it's an open issue right now. But really, it's that will make this project that much more achievable and accessible to the community. And we knew we'd hit this problem when we had enough ideas floating around, but now it's time to actually solve it. So we're looking forward to that partnership, and it's really great to see what people have done with it. So thanks for the time today, Carl.
Thank you, Dove. Next up, we have AI Readiness SIG governance framework updates. So this is going to be split up into 2 parts: a recap of our recent London in-person workshop from Andy Martin from Control Plane, and then some of the outcomes of that on focusing on machine readability by Lee Feingold from Morgan Stanley. And just to set this in context a little bit, we've shown this slide in the past to the community, but the governance framework launched in Q1 2024 and has had a series of events. And so this event was continuing the momentum of the work that we've demonstrated to the community in the past. With that, Andy, over to you.
Thank you very much. And welcome to the AI Readiness Framework. The goal of this project is to unify the disparate controls and the disparate recommendations, as with any set of frameworks that have pervaded the industry in the last couple of years, and to bring some clarity and push forward in a direction that brings community together and reduces that deduplication of efforts. So we had a wonderful session hosted by Citibank and Canary Wharf. That view on a lack of a unified framework, mapping FSI concerns to existing frameworks, so cherry picking the things that we believe are relevant, level setting controls from between them, and looking at real world implementation concerns with a view to the emerging and changing regulatory requirements. These include governance issues beyond model accuracy, with looking at hallucination, compliance approvals, lineage tracking of data, and especially digging into that data, the provenance, the poisoning, and the freshness of those things. Again, some of these are bleeding edge research topics, and so we are, as always, doing our best to be as secure as possible without strictures and constraints around innovation. So the discussions on the day were focused around shared responsibilities for AI platforms and layers, especially where to apply controls. Are there controls that can be pushed down as low as possible to the provided shared infrastructure to model that shared responsibility and the operational model of providing as much functionality to developers and application teams while pushing down as much of the security as possible and analyzing where those layers sit? We also spent a lot of time talking about security training and education. If we're giving people superpowers, where are the guardrails? How do they know where and where not to apply them? These are old and hackneyed refrains from years and years of security champions. How do we do application security? How do we bring everybody on a security journey? And it's very much same problem, different day, different shape of technology. And it's good to hear that actually real world implementation means that a lot of those strategies that have worked do continue to work, finding those champions and empowering them to educate their colleagues. We also went through a little bit of the jailbreaking and testing analogies, how we work with the moving target of a non-deterministic system when we're looking to gain that ultimately deterministic binary clarity. Is this go, no go on this particular test case? And what this distilled down to in terms of how useful is this framework in the day-to-day of the people who are dealing with these issues, the pervading refrain was a shopping list for compliance. How do we take a system or an application to the compliance team when that compliance team have probably changed what they consider a compliant system since the last time we spoke to them? And of course, this is again emergent from the multifarious hydra of different legislation in different places. In order to try and balance those different legislations, we're looking at this cross-standards taxonomy, that is NIST, MITRE, OWASP, of course, where there are concrete requirements from things like the EU AI Act. How do those intersect? This is a lot of work. We know that from work done in the Common Cloud Controls project. But again, we're looking to unify, and we'll talk a little bit more about that briefly. That 7% global penalty for the EU AI Act was an interesting topic of discussion. When we're operating globally, are organizations in FINOS likely to run different tiers of compliance in jurisdictions per domain? It's very unlikely. It's a huge overhead. So how much is that EU AI Act actually the sort of global or Western view on that? Increasingly more, it appears. And again, that data lineage, how reproducibility plays into these things. And ultimately, the model controls and data science, how much of that can we reuse, and it is currently being reused across AI systems. Other brief notable mentions, a lot of that question of decentralized AI responsibility, again, sharing services and providing services internally, ethical and security considerations from insider threats, co-pilots, user journey risk mitigation. Ultimately, there's still a lot of innovation and clarity needed across the industry to really drive forward through the ether, which is reciprocal with the changing regulatory landscape, of course. With a view to this, there is a pull request number 102 created by one of our co-chairs, Colin, that takes the framework that we've built, which is architecture specific, to a RAG architecture with an externally hosted foundational model, and brings architecture agnosticism. This may make it easier for compliance departments, maybe slightly harder for different default architectures. We welcome feedback on PR number 102. And moving forward, the group is continuing to integrate more tightly with other FINOS projects. That is especially around CCC and the responsible AI strategies. Again, I urge you to join the calls. We are friendly people talking about interesting things, and all feedback welcome.
And on that note of feedback, last chance for the QR codes at the top. So one goes directly to the governance framework so that you can read it. And then Luca Barella has made a survey on GitHub formalizing collecting feedback. So if you could please check out the feedback survey. Now's a really good time in the project lifecycle to give this feedback so that we can get it into going from V0 to draft to production to V1 of this. If you cannot provide public feedback for any reason, please contact myself or Luca Barella, and we will work with you on getting that collected. Okay, next track, one of several tracks at the in-person was machine readability. So I will hand this over to Lee Feingold from Morgan Stanley if he is available to talk.
So Lee, I'm afraid, isn't available, but I will step in on his behalf. As Andrew was saying, yes, there's been a lot of work and there's a lot of overlap between several of the projects that are driving that governance and risk mitigation perspective. You can see obviously on screen the Common Cloud Controls, the Compliant Financial Infrastructure projects alongside the AI Readiness. and CALM, the Common Architecture Language Model, which has come out of the Architecture of Code project, which is one of the groups that I helped co-lead. Lee was able to go along to the workshop at City and really take part in a conversation around how we can start to look at building that machine readability of the AI governance framework. This is somewhere that CALM has been designed to be helpful in terms of being able to actually take what we would traditionally draw as architectures on whiteboards and actually codify them in a way that we can generate both human and machine readable documentation. So for human readable, we'll be able to produce things like knowledge-based portals, solution architecture description documents, off the actual code-based architecture. And in fact, linking back to TraderX, we are currently working on a TraderX version of that. You'll be able to see a version of that coming out in the next week or so, where we will show how we can tag specific control requirements in various different domains, from security to performance to resilience, into the actual architecture. And that's what a big section of the group that Lee was involved with at the workshop was focused on. Whilst the groups like Common Cloud Controls have got the risk catalogs, how do we map that into an actual architecture representation? What are the relationships and the components that are actually impacted and need to evidence that they've got those controls in place? And that's somewhere that CALM can help come in. We've been able to put together an initial PR just showing what that reference architecture might look like, and that's something that there's a group of people from across those different projects involved in at the moment, helping to push forward and crystallize, and hopefully off the back of that we'll be able to publish that sort of machine readable AI governance framework version. One of the things that does really enable this is a templating platform that has been built through CALM very recently, and that'll be coming out in the coming weeks. This also has already been started to be adopted, certainly within some organizing members of FINOS, to actually automate the integration with our own security processes and tooling. So there's a real opportunity here between what we're doing to both work with each other to benefit from broad community consensus around what controls are needed, but then to also be able to really make savings in terms of the developer experience, the security experience. Anyone who's been involved with security knows how long it can be to get regulated industries like ours through those processes. And we really feel that we're going to be able to save significant amounts of times for firms that are able to come and adopt the frameworks that we're building here. With that, back to you, Carl.
Thank you very much, Matt. And before I change the slide on this, the CCC GitHub issue is the collection of features of controls and features from the Common Cloud Controls perspective. And on the top right is the COM GitHub issue with the kind of first stab at the reference of making the reference architecture machine readable in COM architecture as code. We don't have here, right here, this is the next AI readiness governance framework calendar. There's also the COM or architecture as code calls on Tuesday and Thursday, respectively, on the calendar. Next, over to Ian Sloan from FINOS on giving a brief talk on LLM, CDM, and fine-tuning.
Okay. You stressed brief, so I'll try to be brief. So as a reminder, a workshop at last year's OSFF in London emphasized the use of LLMs for generating structured data, which allowed us to cross-pollinate with another project at FINOS, namely the Common Domain Model project. So since June last year, there's been a track, or an initiative looking at the use of LLMs and CDM. And that's been running effectively since last June, and then culminated maybe in October with a presentation at OSFF in New York of some really interesting use cases and successful demonstrations, where we saw people using CDM or developing a chatbot for CDM, using or doing benchmarking of LLMs based on CDM information and other information, tools for converting legal and regulatory text into CDM data objects. Lots of really useful demonstrations of how LLMs could be used. If you're interested in that, actually, you can watch the video online, because there might be people already on the YouTube channel. Look for AI meets CDM workshop on FINOS's YouTube channel. So further to that, moving on from what we did in October, that CDM chatbot has been developed and enhanced. It was presented recently in February at a CDM masterclass in London, and we're going to publicly release it in the coming weeks as part of the CDM resources on cdm.finos.org. So it'll become part of the resources with the documentation for the project and other things there. So that's really exciting and shows the power of something that was an idea last summer coming to fruition. Within the group, which is now called AI Exploration, formerly LLM Exploration, as is noted there, we have upcoming presentations featuring the winners of the, as mentioned, DTCC Hackathon. So that's really exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing that myself. We're also talking a lot about benchmarking and building a curriculum of questions and answers to test and benchmark LLMs, and the guys from Columbia University are doing great work on that. So call for participation, the call to action, please get involved. We're looking for fresh ideas as well for AI use cases, even beyond CDM. But yeah, we're particularly within the LLM benchmarking. We'd love to see people come along and set out some questions and answers so that we can test those models. Okay, that's it for me on this topic. But
just a quick addendum. So the DTCC Hackathon winners will present to the TOC, the Technical Oversight Committee, and then the LLM Exploration will figure out how to either watch those recordings or figuring out what to do with the presentation, so we don't have to have our winners jump around to too many calls. Okay, with that, our next presenter is, again, Ian, to give a more holistic view of the common domain model.
Okay, the CDM project is going from strength to strength. Very recently, just 2 weeks ago, we had the CDM showcase at State Street in Canary Wharf in London. Really big event, 300 registrants, loads of great talks and demos. It really shows the interest in the project, and it really felt like an inflection point where things were becoming very real in terms of adoption of the CDM, and that was reflected in a lot of the comments. If you follow it, you might have seen on LinkedIn, etc. So a key part of the event was we saw about 10 different hands-on demos with people actually showing the real-world use cases and benefits of CDM. That was great to see. There was also validation of the approach that the industry is taking in adopting CDM, with JP Morgan, again, reflecting on the success of their implementation. As a reminder, JP Morgan have implemented CDM as part of their reporting workflow. This happened in October. So went live into production in October. So they've had a few months of data, a few months of experience of it working. And it really seems to have had a transformative effect and streamlined that particular workflow where they see faster issue resolution. One of the things which this audience might be aware of, regression testing is a big problem for regulatory implementations. Regression testing, which would have taken a week and a half usually, has been reduced to about 3 hours. So that was a big statement from the stage from Nick Mojer from JP Morgan. Wider adoption, other firms, not just banks, are starting to leverage CDM in their products or in their solutions. And that's because their clients are asking them. And that's a quote. So that really does showcase some momentum there. Other things beyond the showcase and the bright light, so to speak, the CDM 6 release, 6.0 release. So that's the second major CDM release since it's been open sourced at FINOS. So that's a collaborative effort by all the community and ISDA and ISDA, etc. Interesting things there about asset refactoring and payout refactoring, which might be interesting to you. And yeah, other things around the object builder has been upgraded as well to the new version, and the documentation, etc. Obviously, but the object builder, if that's something you look at, that's also upgraded. Moving on to the next slide. Really just a call to action to get involved. You can read the blog post there around CDM6, take the training, and also join the new working group, CDM Tokenization Working Group, which just had its first call, and there was touching 30 to 40 people on that really interesting topic. And we've just ratified on the steering group yesterday a new CDM Physical Risk Working Group, which sees some of the work on OS Climate starting to integrate with CDM. So really a story from beginning to end there of CDM cross-pollinating with other FINOS projects. That's it from me, Carl.
Thank you very much, Ian. And it's just occurring to me now how big a deal getting to 6.0 version is. I'm just trying to think how many pieces of software I know that have actually gotten to version 6. So big congrats to the whole community there. Next up to Rob Moffett, giving us some updates on FTC3.
Hi, yeah, I'm going to keep this really brief. FTC3, everyone's favorite interoperability API, we're about to release a version 2.2 of this, which we've been attending OSFFs over the last year or so. It's a pretty big deal for the FTC3 community. If you can join me on Tuesday, the 18th of March, 2 p.m. GMT or 10 a.m. EST, we're going to have the FTC3 general meeting, which is a quarterly meeting we do in FTC3. Can we skip on to the next slide, Carl? And we're going to make it a special general meeting, which is going to cover all sorts of stuff to do with the 2.2 release. We're going to have demos. We're going to talk about FTC3, talk about Go and .NET bindings, and talk a little bit about FTC3 security, which is a hot topic right now. Can you put the last slide up quickly, Carl? So yeah, this is on Tuesday next week. If you want to know more about FTC3, you want to find out what's happening in the community, this is your QR code. Hopefully I will see you all there. Looking forward to it. Cheers, Carl, back to you.
Thank you very much, Rob. We are doing so well on time today. Big shout out to our panelists today. Over to Peter, a name most people here should know, Peter Smolovich, on the Financial Services Autism Hackathon upcoming.
Hey, so hope no one put away their phone for the previous QRs. This is a much bigger QR, so try to scan it. I will talk about this thing. So this is the 8th FSI Autism Hackathon. What is this about? You have some stats on the screen. These are the less important. The more important thing, this is the way to give back using your skills. Everybody is very good in painting fences or doing some other giving back, but being able to give back using the technical skills you do have is something very unique and something we should really think about it. Last year, in 2024, we had more than 250 people joining. FINOS was one of the big supporting partners for this effort, and we hope that we are going to not only hit this number, I hope that we are going to actually break the record and go even above 250 people on how many people are participating. The QR code asks some very basic questions, your name, the company you are coming from, or whether you are signing up as independent, and which use case of the 6 that we are going to attack this year you would like to be involved in. And it's an amazing experience, and I really suggest anyone to join. And when I say anyone, I really want to pressure, we are not only looking for developers, we look for project managers, UX people, other experts. If you are a parent having a kid with autism, you are welcome, because we need this kind of whole way testing experience opportunities as well. So please do consider signing up and joining. I will speak a few more sentences just to make sure everybody is able to take a picture of the QR code. I know it's a big one and not that easy to scan. And of course, I would like to point out, not all the members are FINOS members currently. We are working on getting some of the members on the member list of the FSI Autism Hackathon to become FINOS members. But on the other hand, we would love to have more of the now 100+ members of FINOS to join this FSI Autism Hackathon. You can join both in person. You can see some picture there in New York, or you can join online. There is no demand for you to be there in person. You are more than welcome to join online if you can. So that's from my side. Please sign up and come. The more the merrier.
Thank you very much, Peter, and great presentation. I know this was an event that was very exciting to the FINOS community last year, and I know neurodivergency support is a topic of interest to many people in the wider community. Oops, sorry, I didn't update the name here, but Miguel and Khalid from Morgan Stanley. Apologies for not getting your names here. Over to you to talk about our new DevOps automation working group, Evolution at Scale.
Hi there, Miguel Gasca from Morgan Stanley, and I'm really just here to say hello so that you can see my face, recognize me, and hopefully you come and join us. Our next call is actually just right after this one, and I'm going to hand over to Cal to talk through the working group.
Sure. So my name is Khalid Sawaf. Most people call me Cal. So I'm joining up with Miguel on this wonderful new working group. The genesis behind the working group was really simple. A bunch of us were we're talking about some of the challenges that we face on a day-to-day basis related to a variety of different tasks that we have to do on code bases. And these tasks could range from upgrading libraries to applying best practices or remediating static code analysis results and whatnot. And we reached a really interesting point, which was the complexity of the tasks in and of themselves are very manageable, but where it really becomes challenging is when you have to do this over and over again over dozens, if not hundreds, of code bases. And we've been exploring different approaches and different solutions to be able to scale that and to be able to evolve our code bases according to new requirements and new best practices. And it seemed like a very logical and very natural problem that other FINOS members would have. So we decided to form this working group really to get a bunch of interested parties together to really talk about these challenges. And when we talk about interesting parties, we're not just we're focusing on developers, but also architects. We're talking about security experts, people in operations, people who are SREs, really people who have struggled over the years and trying to answer that question: how will this scale? So really, we want to get a bunch of enthusiasts together to really talk about what are some of the different scenarios and use cases where we really are struggling to do something at scale. How do we offer solutions that will work across hundreds of code bases or across very large code bases as more and more companies try to go towards monorepos? Our priority right now is really identifying those use cases as part of the working group, identifying different solutions that participants have employed, encouraging open sourcing as well as contributions to open source projects as well. And so I'll leave you with this, as Miguel mentioned, right after this call in 17 minutes. If you really are, if you're interested in this topic, if you're passionate about it the same way we are, we encourage you to join us, contribute to the solution, share some of your pain points. It's always good to get together and talk about some pain. And we're really excited to see where this working group goes and what are some of the concrete deliverables that we can produce.
And I'll say the initial call for this group was 2 Wednesdays ago, and it was one of the best opening calls that I've seen for a new SIG or project or working group in my time at FINOS. Very good group, exciting stuff being talked about, and I think very applicable to many people in our membership. So if you can't make the one in 15 and a half minutes, then it is an ongoing bi-weekly call on Wednesdays. Next up, we are doing so great on time today. So big round of applause to all of our panelists today. We covered a lot of topics and everyone kept it brief and concise and interesting. Over to Kendall for some save the dates and member updates.
Yes, thanks, Carl. Hi, everyone. Kendall Perez. I'm on the member success team at FINOS. Just some friendly reminders. We do have our next OS and finance webinar with our FINOS member Hedera. That is next Wednesday. So make sure to register, and we're excited to see you there. And also on March 19th is the deadline for the Silver Board Representative nominations. We opened those nominations a couple weeks ago. So if you are a Silver member and you know someone within your company that would be a great representative on the FINOS board, please have them submit their nominations. And speaking of the board, we also will have a Gold member board representative election later this year in the May timeframe. There'll be one seat up. If you have any questions there, feel free to reach out to me at membersuccess@finos.org. And like you heard earlier on the call, there's also OSFF in London and OSFF New York City. So reminder to sponsor and get your proposals in once CFP opens. And that's all for me. Thanks, Carl.
Great. Thank you, Kendall. And with that, we get to the end of our scheduled talk. So we're going to do a little recap for the calls to actions. I'll leave this, we just saw the save the dates. We just understood the importance of getting them on time so that you can get your free tickets if you're a member before the price goes up. So I'll leave this up for a couple minutes, and then I will move back to the CFP page to close out our calls to action here. Again, big round of applause to all of our panelists. We covered a huge amount of information in a very structured and short amount of time. I think that was nice and engaging for our wider audience.